Hello and welcome, dear viewers. This is our weekly edition, ATV Special. The program is dedicated to present you the most important current affairs running in our nation. And here I am Zelalem Ibeltal, your host. Conflict and instability have dominated much of the political history of our nation. Various people, students, farmers, political elites, and other segments of the society have sacrificed their lives to establish a democratic system. Even recently, beginning from 2015, Ethiopians have struggled to end injustice and undemocratic rule. Their struggle reached a pivotal stage when they bring a new leadership. However, though they bring a new leadership, mob justice, ethnic conflicts, and other social chaos were re-emerged again, and these were dangerous threats to the new leadership and to the new reform as well. One of the destabilizing factors here was the establishment and the movement of guerrilla fighters in different parts of the country. Amhara region, which is one of the autonomous regions in Ethiopia, was also a victim of these guerrilla fighters. Some of the fighters have legitimate questions and some others have not. However, irrespective of their questions, they were destabilizing the region and the nation at wide. As a result, the regional and federal government of Ethiopia were in a position to rush to war against these guerrilla fighters. We can imagine how devastating it could have been had the war been conducted between the two forces. The deadlock between the government and these guerrilla fighters were the worries of all of us. But thanks to the Peace, Development and Reconciliation Council, which ended the deadlock with a successful, peaceful negotiation. Dear viewers, now I'm joined by members of this council. So please do stay with us and you're gonna learn more, you're gonna enjoy it. So now I have to introduce you my guests. So my guest is Mr. Balaihun Dase, who is coordinator of Peace, Development and Reconciliation Council. Mr. Balaihun, welcome to Amhara TV studio and many thanks for coming here.
Thanks.
Okay, so let us briefly see the general picture of the guerrilla fighters. Who are the guerrilla fighters? For what purpose they are fighting for? And what is their point after all?
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to thank you all. And we really appreciate for the opportunity that you gave us to present our peace and reconciliation efforts that we have made to secure and stabilize the area, especially Western Amhara region. As we all know, in early 70s, there were guerrilla fighters and fierce resistance movement in Western Amhara, especially in Gondar region. There were a number of political groups who have been conducting their political activities to restore democracy and rule of law, justice in the country. Most of the guerrilla fighters were emerged following the downfall of Haile Selassie, King Haile Selassie the first. You know, most of the guerrilla fighters had their own political organizations, EPRP, Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Party, and EDU, Ethiopian Democratic Union. And this resulted in the culture of military resistance in Western Amhara, especially in Gondar. After TPLF took power in 1991, these forces were there to claim to have democratic, democratic government in the country. Then this resulted in a kind of guerrilla fighters. Most of guerrilla fighters had their own agenda. They have got ethnic agenda. They have got country agenda, nationwide agenda, but they have got different agendas. But they were making their resistance movement in that area. But we can see, we can differentiate, we can categorize these guerrilla fighters into two.
Sure.
The first guerrilla fighters are guerrilla fighters who want to claim the annexed land which were forcefully taken by TPLF, Walqait and Raya. Most of the guerrilla fighters want to restore the land. They just want to have democracy to the people. They just want to fight the TPLF dictatorial regime. After Colonel Dammaka fired its bullet of freedom against TPLF dictatorial regime, the people were motivated to fight and confront the TPLF dictatorial regime by just military resistance movement. But on the other hand, there are guerrilla fighters who doesn't represent the real guerrilla freedom fighters, the real guerrilla fighters.
Not legitimate fighters.
Yeah, they are not legitimate fighters. Yeah. They don't have any agenda. Their agenda is just to loot and to make banditry activities against the well-being of the people. So most of the guerrilla fighters are freedom fighters, we can say.
Okay. Mr. Balaihun, you explained the status of guerrilla fighters interestingly very well, beginning from the historical backgrounds, and that's very good information, I think. But one thing is clear. There could not be two forces in a single country. However, this red line was violated in Ethiopia. That means on one side, there were guerrilla fighters or militant groups who were moving out of the information and permission of the government. And on the other side, obviously, there was a government and there is a government force. So how tenseful was the situation and what were the problems that the people face due to the existence and the movement of these guerrilla fighters?
As we all know, TPLF were forced to lose power because of the resistance movement made by legitimate guerrilla fighters. These guerrilla fighters overthrew the TPLF dictatorial regime. After TPLF failed, a peace agreement were made between the government and the legitimate guerrilla fighters.
The legitimate guerrilla
fighters. Legitimate guerrilla fighters. A peace agreement was signed between the government and the guerrilla fighters. Most of the guerrilla fighters had their own parties, but some had not their own party. They are simply a group.
Yeah.
But after some time, the government and the guerrilla fighters, created differences. These differences causes tension. There was escalating tension, especially in Amhara region cities, in Western Amhara region cities. Actually, most of the causes are the questions that raised. They said, most of the guerrilla fighters said, especially the legitimate guerrilla fighters said, the government did not fulfill its promises. The government promised to restore the forcibly annexed lands of Amhara, Raya and Walqait. They said, these land are not still restored. This is their first question.
Yeah.
Their second question is the government should give a recognition to Fannos. Fanno is the cultural name of the guerrilla fighters of Amhara people, as we know. Fannos. But we just have observed a very tense situation, and the government decided to avoid any informal military group. Of course, that's appropriate. We should not have two military groups in a country. That's dangerous, as we know. Any form of informal structure is dangerous and devastating for the peace and security of a country. The government has responsibility, due responsibility to safeguard the lives of the people. So actually, these guerrilla fighters knew this situation. It was tenseful. As we all know, the government decided to destroy any informal structures, and there were a kind of, war front-like situation in and around Gondar, and we have observed this, and the people were frustrated by this situation. You know, most of the situation were ghastly. It was abject.
Yeah.
The people suffered a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The people were forced to give properties and money to those illegitimate fighters. Illegitimate fighters.
Yeah.
They are, you know, criminals, we can say.
Yeah.
They have been forcefully just looting money from the society, especially from the business community. The business community were highly harassed by these illegitimate guerrilla fighters. Illegitimate criminals.
Yeah.
Criminals. I'm not saying the legal ones.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the real fighters.
Yeah.
But those fighters who are, you know, making business in the name of the real fighters,
Sure.
were making abject situation. We're creating abject situation to the people, especially to the business community. The business community in Gondar, in Bahar Dar, were highly affected by these illegitimate and criminal groups, we
Okay.
can say.
Okay. Okay.
Most of the situation in Gondar were, you know, ghastly. It is hard to explain how the business community faced problems.
Yeah.
Especially, we know a lot of people, more than 100 business people left the area, the region. They just went to Addis because they were not able to secure their livelihood even. If they don't give what they are asked, you know, they will be frustrated even. It was dangerous for their lives. And most of the guerrilla fighter, you know, most of the business community left the region. And as we know, the business community created job opportunity for the people, for the youngsters, for the new graduates. If this business community leave the region, we lose a lot of things. We lose the economy, we lose the peace, the security. And it was, you know, devastating situation.
I do think that now those insecurities and tensions are being stabilized. In particular, you guys, the Peace, Development and Reconciliation Council, have done incredible and historical job in bringing those militant groups to the negotiating tables. So now I want you to tell us the efforts that you have made to bring those militant groups to the negotiating table.
You know, first, we study the situation. We try to look into the problems. What were the root problems of insecurity in the area? We observed that situation. Of course, the government decided not to see, even not to host any informal military groups. So by the time we observe this situation is tenseful, and when we observe escalating tensions between the government and the military groups, we decided to look into the situation. Being with Abba Gabra Jesus, Zawal Dibba, and Abba Yosef, he is the head of the Central Gondar Orthodox Tohado Church.
Yeah.
And we discussed the situation. And we decided we should have to quit this problem. We should have to intervene. We should have to resolve this problem peacefully. We should have to bring reconciliators and peacemakers around the area of Amhara region, and we really have to talk to the real fighters, the real, I mean, freedom fighters,
Yeah.
who have been in different jungles of northwestern Amhara. And we discussed with the government officials, authorities. Most of the government officials and authorities were willing to entertain our peace and reconciliation process. They accepted our question. And they accepted to deliver three alternatives. The government has said 3 alternatives, as we all know. The first alternative are, if they just want to struggle in peaceful way or in military way, they can join the government force, the government formal force. The second is just to create job opportunity, and the government want to deliver the access for training and financial access The third alternative is just to abandon any military activity, to abandon and not to participate in any military activity. You know, what we did was we just talked to the guerrilla fighters, we talked to the government authorities, and we really have to put them into a table to discuss and resolve their own agenda. We made them to resolve their problems in just on table, in a round table.
Yeah.
We made them to resolve their problems in a round table. Actually, most of the government authorities were, you know, pleased to solve the problem. Even most of the fighters and the government officials have the same agenda. That's the agenda of restoring the annexed land of Amhara. This agenda is their common agenda. This agenda is the common agenda of the people of Amhara. The agenda of Wolqayt, the agenda of Raya are common agendas of the government and the freedom fighters. So there is no need to differentiate and fight. There is no need of differences between the two forces. Finally, the government officials and authorities promised us that if they are willing to come to negotiating tables and resolve everything peacefully, we are ready to support and to peacefully resolve the problem. They agreed, the government officials agreed. Even just we went to the jungles and find legitimate military fighters, Masafin, you know, Commander Masafin and Commander Araga. We just talked to them and they are willing to resolve the problem. We discussed the Warada authorities, the zonal authorities and the regional authorities, and they all are willing to resolve the problems peacefully. So we were happy and delighted. Then we made them together and resolve their problem. It was so, funny situation. They just have been, hugging together. It was nice. So in the aftermath of the peace process, the government fulfilled its promises. The government delivered land. The government delivered rural and city land to the freedom fighters. 5 freedom fighters. I can mention their names: Commander Araga, Alabacho, Commander Masafin Tasfu, Colonel Dammaka.
Yeah, they were prominent fighters.
Yeah, prominent fighters. Yeah. Prominent fighters were able to deliver land from the government, and the government fulfilled, its promises. Peace is as important as food. Peace is a key element for development. Peace is the most important thing that humankind should have, should possess. Some problems do not need fight, war. There are some people who have warmongering mentality. That's dangerous in our community, by the way. Warmongering mentality is as dangerous as nuclear weapon. The present generation, our generation, is not that wise. It's not that wise because most of the current users have warmongering mentality. That is dangerous. This mentality was our first challenge. All the people, all the youngsters want to resolve every problem by fighting. That's not good. The people of Amhara have the culture of peacemaking, the culture of negotiation, arbitration, mediation. Even in Gondar area, there is there is a culture, prominent culture called Amst. 5 elders sit down in a tree, around a tree, and they put every cases to them. Then they put every cases on the ground and they solve it. We as a people have the culture of peacemaking. We have the culture of reconciliation. Even homicide criminals make peace by this culture. So the most challenging situation was the psychology of our youngsters. These were our challenge. The second thing is most of the fighters do not trust the government. They just believe that the government will not fulfill, the government officials will not fulfill their promises. Most of the fighters think that way. Even the government officials do not trust the fighters. If we give them amnesty, they will go to the jungle once again. They just think that way.
Yeah.
So this was a challenge. But on the other hand, there were brokers between the government officials and the fighters. These brokers they are making money out of the reconciliation. They are making money in the name of peacemaking.
Yeah.
These are broker elders, broker negotiators. There are broker negotiators, which are dangerous for peace.
Yeah.
They resemble peacemakers, but in practical they are not. They just simply make money out of the process.
Yeah.
So this was our challenges. We avoided all the challenges, and we achieved peace at the end.
Okay, well done. Such kinds of agreement and reconciliation, which is initiated by civic organizations like the one you have done, is rare in Ethiopia. So what are the important lessons that you have learned along the road?
Actually, we have just gone up and down since we have seen a lot of challenges. Actually, we achieved what we claimed to have. What we claimed to have was peace. All the lesson that we should, our ultimate agenda. The lesson that we take from peace is, to enjoy and, to see the people's, coexistence and the harmonious situation in the area. That is a lesson that we take. But there are some lessons that we take. The most astonishing lesson that we take was, most of the government officials are not that, rigid. Most of the armies, the freedom fighters, are not that rigid. We have taken lessons. They have got their own color of peace-loving mentality. That's very great thing that we learned, that we have experienced it. Actually, the people are tired of war. That was a great lesson with the war that we have seen. The people of Amhara are tired of war, tired of lack of peace and security. The people of Amhara faced 60 years of war. As we all know, 60 years of war were there in Gondar area, especially in Gondar area. There was consistent war. The people do not need any war. And we have experienced that kind of feeling from the people.
Okay. So peace is something which is hard driven, right? So I think you have done something great and you have to be proud of it. So you can use this opportunity to praise some of the persons and organizations who have contributed to the negotiation.
Actually, we praise the regional government and Central Gondar administrative zone, the Gondar city administrative, the Gondar city administration. We thank and praise the northern Gondar, the western Gondar, the central Gondar, in the city, the Gondar city. And we appreciate especially the regional government authorities. We appreciate the people, even the freedom fighters. We are willing to come to the negotiating tables. We really praise and appreciate their peaceful endeavors and efforts. We have seen changes, especially we have observed changes in freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. We have seen many changes in this reform. But on the other hand, there are some problems, as we all noticed. There is lack of rule of law. The government are not safeguarding the lives of the people. This is the weak side of the reform. But generally speaking, this reform is the golden opportunity to the people of Ethiopia. If we are part of this reform, we should engage in peaceful activities. We shall be united to resolve our problems peacefully. There may be problems, there may be challenges, there may be opportunities along our way, but we really have to have the culture of solving problems in a peaceful manner. Actually, this reform has brought a very good change and opportunity to the people. It was not possible to express your feeling openly when TPLF was in power. Now we have the opportunity to speak our mind. Nobody claimed by the idea that you have. This is the opportunity. But on the other hand, there are actually challenges. But we the people shall be united. We as a people shall be united. The people of Ethiopia shall be united.
That is your view regarding the prospect and challenge of the new Ethiopian reform. Well said, Mr. Balaihun Dese, coordinator of Peace, Development and Reconciliation Council. Mr. Balaihun, I know very well you have cancelled many of your programs, your personal programs, to conduct this interview. And above all, you came from Gondar to Bahar Dar to conduct this exclusive interview. And I feel this is a sign that signifies the fact that you are a man of responsibility and a dedication to the public cause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Viewers, this brings us to the end of our program. Please do stay with the rest of our programs. Bye-bye.